Hi Charlie, welcome to the 7th day of my polling video experiment where I break down and analyze the poll that I posted to LinkedIn last week and whose voting period closed this morning. Today's poll is, what do you think the S&P 500, i.e. the stock market, will do in 2025? Now, as any financial professional will tell you, predicting what's going to happen in the stock market for any given year, or even a 6-month, 3-month, or 1-day period, is notoriously difficult because there are so many variables involved. Will the Fed raise or lower interest rates? Will inflation get out of control? Will the economy collapse? Will we have another recession? Etc., etc., etc. So anyway, I decided to ask my LinkedIn community what their thoughts on the matter were, and I had 4 answer choices: increase a lot, increase a little, decrease a little, and decrease a lot. And I know that a lot and a little are not very scientific indicators of how much something has increased or decreased, but I wanted to give people as much leeway as possible to communicate their perception of how the stock market is going to do. And we can kind of presume that a little increase or decrease is maybe 10% or less, while a lot of increase or decrease is more than 10%. But anyway, I just wanted to measure the overall sentiment of my voting base and see what they thought was going to happen this year. Now, much to my surprise, since I believe most of my voters are affiliated with the financial services industry, or at least other relatively prestigious professional fields like science and mathematics, I was surprised that only 47 of my LinkedIn connections actually voted on this poll, which is significantly less than my average of about 80 voters. Nevertheless, the distribution was still very interesting, and I wanted to share it with you and see if you agree, Charlie. So 26% of my voters said they thought the stock market would increase a lot, 54% said they thought the stock market would increase a little, 9% said they thought the stock market would decrease a little, and 11% said that the stock market would decrease a lot. So that means that 80% of my voters were relatively optimistic about the stock market, as in they chose an answer about the stock market increasing, whereas 20% of them were pessimistic because they chose an answer about the stock market decreasing. Who knows if the spectacular S&P 500 gains from 2024 will be replicated this year? As I said before, there are so many variables that go into what happens to the market, not least of which is investor sentiment, which can change on a dime based solely on rumors, not even substantiated information. It's just sort of the perception that something is going to happen, something good, something bad, that causes the stock market to rally or crash. And that can be quite brutal for investors who have to ride out that volatility, who have to try to make decisions in those very heated moments. So anyway, I just wanted to share a couple of statistics with you to sort of ground our projections and perceptions in reality. So in 2024, the Magnificent Seven stock earnings grew by 33.4%. Now, what are the Magnificent Seven, you might be asking? They're basically the 7 stocks in the S&P 500 with the highest market caps, and they are Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. Basically, these are the golden boys of the technology world, like kind of those tech-heavy, cutting-edge stocks that are supposed to make all of us rich because they are affiliated with the latest and greatest technology. Now, as for the other 493 S&P 500 stocks, their bottom lines grew by 5.2% in 2024, which is actually quite decent considering that these gains were dwarfed by the gains of the Magnificent Seven. And these bottom 493 stocks are expected to increase by 13% in 2025, so their performance is basically going to more than double this year, according to these projections. By contrast, the Magnificent Seven stocks are projected to grow by only 18.6% in 2025. Now, that's more than the average projected growth rate for the bottom 493 stocks, but that's still less than the 33.4% growth that they experienced in 2024. And just goes to show you that just because one sector did extremely well in one year does not mean that that sector or that group of stocks or that mutual fund or that whatever is going to replicate those gains the next year or for the next 2 or 5 or 10 years. That's just not how the stock market works, unfortunately. It's hard to sort of sustain those super high gains, and trying to jump onto the bandwagon of those gains after they've already occurred is not necessarily the wisest investing strategy. So anyway, Goldman Sachs made a few interesting 2025 predictions for particular sectors. They predicted that the communications sector would rise by 19%. That is, the stocks in that sector are projected to rise by 19%. And they believe that energy stocks would, on average, fall by an average of 31%. So if you really want to predict the market, maybe load up on some communication stocks and get rid of whatever energy stocks you have. But I must admit that energy stocks are not considered the most popular sector for retail investors who tend to want more of those shiny gains from, say, Nvidia, Amazon, or Apple. So anyway, Charlie, I hope you enjoyed my little recap of the stock market. I hope you find it interesting that so many people think the S&P 500 will increase this year. And if you ever want to start investing, I recommend going with the Vanguard S&P 500 index fund. Again, this is not financial advice. Please consult a financial professional about it. But my point is, just try to keep it as simple as possible. Don't try to do any complicated things like with futures or options or derivatives or something like that, because if you don't know how you're supposed to be making money with a particular strategy or security, you're probably not going to be making a lot of money in the long run. You'll probably be losing that money just because you don't understand what you're doing. So please, please, please consult a financial professional and try to keep things as simple as possible so that you actually understand how your money is supposed to grow in the long run, and you can make adjustments if things are not going as well as you planned. Okay, Charlie? Again, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for tomorrow, where we will discuss the 8th poll in a row. So I hope you're excited, and have a wonderful day, Charlie. Bye.